I'm itching to talk Survivor 50, and this is my excuse to do so. The closer and closer we get to the end of Survivor 48, the closer and closer we get to finding out who will be on the islands of Fiji competing in Survivor 50. The first returning player season since Winners at War, and the first returning player season that has like an actual player pool since Survivor Game Changers. That's 2017. It's been nearly a decade since anybody who isn't a winner has had a chance to return to Survivor. And that's both exciting and terrifying. And I'm deciding to enact on both of those emotions I'm feeling to make a 2-part video series. In this little series, I will be creating 2 hypothetical casts for Survivor 50. More importantly, 2 realistic casts for Survivor 50. One of these casts, I will talk through the worst possible outcome for what a Survivor 50 cast would look like for me personally, and another cast talking through the best possible outcome for what a Survivor 50 cast would look like. Again, for me personally. And if you couldn't tell by the title or the thumbnail, today I'm talking Doomsday Cast. I hope I don't need to do a ton of explanation about what a Doomsday Cast looks like. This cast is constructed of 18 people that I feel are realistic options that could be on Survivor 50. All people that through just either my personal feelings or rumors or speculation seem to be genuine options or contenders to be on the newest season of Survivor. However, these 18 are obviously some of the last people I hope are on the cast that have a genuine shot of being there. If I wanted to make a true worst case scenario dreamcast, I would just name these awful, horrible people, but that's not very fun or interesting to me, so I decided I would drop 18 names that if seen on the Survivor 50 cast, I'm not going to be very happy about them, all while sticking to the diversity mandate when creating this cast as well. When I do say unhappy though, that can venture to many different avenues. I'm not picking the 18 people that could be on Survivor 50 that I dislike the most. No, it's not that simple. Yes, I definitely do dislike or even hate some of the people I will have on this cast, but there's a good amount of people on this cast that I actually do kind of like, and individually would be pretty happy to see on this cast. However, when I bring in the context of the entire cast together, that's where I can see a lot of these picks becoming the quote-unquote worst case scenario, which I will obviously further explain as I move through each pick. So yes, this list is completely subjective, simply because I have no idea how to make an objective list of this, so if y'all disagree with me on any of my picks, that's perfectly okay. Just don't completely rip me a new one in the comments. Instead, you can politely disagree, and we can have a discussion about it. Aside from that, I got nothing else to say except for a big shout out to JudSP on Twitter and in my YouTube comments. They were a great avenue and outlet to talk through this list, and taking this challenge on with 2 minds instead of 1 was really fun. They're really cool, so I will have their Twitter in the description if you want to give them a follow, but outside of that, let's dive into my disaster cast for Survivor 50. Moving through this cast, I'm going to talk in chronological order of players when they first played Survivor. And for our first player, I'm dipping back to old school Survivor, and not just old school Survivor, but the old school Survivor season, Season 1, Survivor Borneo. Based on everything Jeff has said about wanting to hit all eras of the show and really wanting to look back at Season 1, Player 1, I think Jeff is going to try very hard to get somebody from Borneo on 50. And at least 2 people from the pre-All-Star crowd, so seasons 1 through 7. And so I did just that on this cast. And for my Borneo representative, this person is on the worst case scenario cast, not because of how I feel about them, but more because of who they would take the place of, and that's Jervis Peterson. Jervis was actually a lot of fun on Blood vs. Water, and I think that drama and bluntness he would bring would be a lot of fun on a modern season. So Jervis himself isn't a doomsday pick at face value because I think Jervis would be at least an inspired pick that I wouldn't hate. My issue is that Jervis kind of feels like a desperation pick. As much as I would love it, Survivor will not be casting more than 3 pre-All-Stars people, probably just 2. I just don't see any more than that. And when we have the potential of a Greg Buis, a Sean Rector, Rob Cesternino, even a Lex on the men's side, to see Jervis be the pre-All-Stars pick would feel a lot less like they really wanted Jervis and a lot more like they couldn't get anybody else. And that's my issue with Jervis and why I have him on this cast, because Jervis on Survivor 50 means there's almost a 0% chance we get any of the other 4 names I just mentioned. And that would really suck because it's been so long since we've seen any of those other guys, where we've at least seen Jervis back in 2013. No shade to Jervis, but I desperately need that OG representation, and Jervis is not a top priority to be that representation. My next choice is my other pre-All-Stars representation, moving over to the second season of the show, the Australian Outback, and I'm talking Alicia Calloway. And Alicia is somebody I think Survivor is interested in to fill as an old school pick, and somebody that I feel at the very least would not completely shut down the idea of playing again. Again, I'm very confident Survivor wants some OG representation, and while they definitely have their preferences, I think at the end of the day they will do anything to just fill up those OG slots for the sake of having old scores. Alicia fits that bill on the women's side perfectly, so I can definitely see this as being one of those super random choices Survivor makes because of the lack of other OG women they want back. But unlike Jervis, where I feel he's on that list because of the people they could have casted instead, Alicia is here because I just have no care to see Alicia play Survivor again. Alicia has the unfortunate case of me not knowing how she would play on the return and me not caring to know how she would play on the return. There are other old scores like a Greg Buis that I have no idea how they would play if they came back, but I'm very interested to see how he would play if he came back. Same with a Jenna Lewis. Both of those names are people that are wild cards, but intriguing wild card. Alicia is a wild card that I just don't care to see how it unfolds. And if she is our female old school representation, it would be shocking, but not intriguing. And that's some of the worst things I can say about somebody on a cast like this, which is why I put her on the cast. Now we are jumping up to the teens, talking through a pretty infamous season of Survivor in Cook Islands. And yes, I'm talking about somebody who has come back multiple times, but is probably the lesser name out of all of those Cook Islands returnees in Candace Woodcock. And yes, Candace had really fun moments on Blood vs. Water, but I've just never been the biggest Candace fan throughout her Survivor journey. She's never been one to catch my eye on any of her runs and never produced good enough television or strategy to intrigue me. On Cook Islands, her arc is just getting shit on at every opportunity after mutinying, but that wasn't interesting to watch. The Penner dynamics or the I-2-4 were always the more interesting storylines. Heroes vs. Villains, she completely fades into the background for me. Even within the heroes, which are clearly the more underedited tribe, she's one of the least notable members until her very last round. And of course, her Blood vs. Water moments are fun, but she still gets overshadowed out there by Marissa and Brad Culpepper in her run. So she's always been somebody that's kind of been overrated to me as a 3-time player. And even the people who look at her fondly don't see her as a legend of Survivor or anywhere close. So just don't think I need or care for Candace in the year 2025, and that's why she makes the list. Alright, we got our teens representation out of the way, and now we're moving all the way up to, ironically, the last season, our last person we just talked about played on. It's Blood vs. Water, and in particular, I'm talking Ciara Easton. And Ciara obviously was a big name in that era of the show, with her going to Rocks and voting out her mom. You know the whole ordeal. But I feel like I've seen all I want to see from Ciara. Every time she's come back, it's just been less and less interesting to see, to where I think we can all accept her Blood vs. Water run was great and probably best case scenario for Ciara, both entertainment and game-wise. So if she's been almost a nothing burger on her following 2 appearances, what's telling you that she's going to be great on a 4th appearance? Ciara Easton is just somebody that production and Jeff love so much more than the audience does. And that scares me as far as their willingness to cast her. But also is somebody I'm just hoping we don't see again out of fear of just taking up a casting spot that could have gone somewhere better and more interesting, despite being a big name. Moving 1 season ahead to Survivor Cagayan, I have somebody that I really do enjoy seeing on my TV screen, somebody who appeared on the Challenge USA actually, and a name I was really excited about to be on that season. But the more I think about it, the more I think this person playing a 3rd time on Survivor would not be that interesting to me, and that's Tasha Fox. Tasha was a really fun presence and underdog on Cagayan and in the first half of Cambodia. And even on the Challenge USA, I was excited for the prospects of Tasha coming back. However, the second half of Cambodia and Tasha's actual appearance on the Challenge USA has really thrown me off the idea of Tasha returning again. Tasha is in the same boat with me as Sierra. Her first appearance was so great and definitely warranted a return, but on that subsequent return, or multiple returns, you kind of realize the first appearance is the best you're going to get. Even though Tasha made the final 3 in Cambodia, there's nothing notable from her game once the post-merge hits. I just don't think Tasha would bring anything notable enough for me to be on a cast that is as highly anticipated as Survivor 50. For those reasons, Tasha's here on the cast. Moving on to the 30s of Survivor and dipping into Survivor Go Wrong, I have 2 picks from this season. And the first one is such a random name that has been heavily rumored around Reddit and Twitter for some reason. And while I see the intrigue, I just don't get it. And that is Julia Sokolowski. And Julia is constantly mentioned as somebody who would thrive in a return to Survivor, as the first time she played, she was so young and the potential was just through the roof. But I simply am not interested to see that potential. Because if I'm being real, how good would Julia be on a return? What is the peak that we could find from Julia Sokolowski? Because I'm struggling to see it as any potential that I care about. It gives me the vibes of one of the stragglers on Game Changers that ride to the mid or end game and give little to no impact on the season itself, but only made it that far because they weren't a threat. I just personally don't see the potential that others do. On the other hand, I also have Julia here because I think if Julia is on the cast, that means Sydney Gillian isn't on, and that's a world I don't want to live in. Spoiler alert for my best case scenario cast, Sydney might make an appearance there, and if we don't get Sydney on 50, and our consolation prize is Julia, you guys don't want to see what I'm going to become if that happens. And that just gives me more of a reason to not want Julia on the cast. Staying with Survivor Go Wrong, I'm back to finally talk about another man. And this guy is very popular with the casuals and has come back before, but I just don't think it's needed on 50, and that's Tai Trang. And Tai is somebody, like I said, loved by viewers, loved by production, which obviously mean he's at the very least going to be considered for 50, if not actively pursued for 50. My issue with Tai is not him as a character, but it's his style of play and what he has shown us on his 2 runs. His style of play obviously is very advantage focused, where he finds all these idols and uses these advantages, and that's Tai's reputation, which is why some people love him, but I just don't. And you include that with his 2 runs where, yes, he's gotten 3rd and 4th, but I kind of think that's the best he's gonna do. I don't think there's a world Tai can win Survivor because Tai has shown us who he is on 2 different runs. And that isn't a bad thing because I do like Tai, he's likable, but I personally don't want a slot for Survivor 50 being taken up by somebody who will play a way I just don't want to see, and also will not be somebody I see winning this game. Those 2 factors put Tai here on my Doomsday cast. The next pick is a very interesting one, as he may be on this Doomsday cast, but I am actively expecting him to be on the cast, and I do enjoy him as a character, and that's Rick Devens. And I know there are many people out there that hate Rick Devens and all that, but I've always thought Rick Devens was mesmerizing television, where, of course, he's very idol-centric like Tai, but brought more entertainment with that idol-centric game. And I think his downfall in the finale was so good that it kind of makes perfect sense he would come back. And Jeff also loves this man. He was the first On Fire co-host, and I think he's a lock to be on this cast if I'm being real. If I like all of these things, then why is Devens on this list? Well, the answer to that is the online community. If/when Devens is on 50, we're going to get an onslaught of people online hating on him constantly for seemingly existing. You know, doing that natural reality TV fan thing, and I can already feel myself getting a headache from the thought of it. To the point that I would rather just leave Rick Devens off to make the weirdos online happy. And I'm not like craving Rick Devens as on a return because I don't think he would do well anyways, so as a whole, it kind of feels like a win-win that he's not on the cast and is the reason why he's on this worst case scenario cast, even though I do like Rick Devens more than most of the people online. That is everybody pre-New Era, so the rest of this cast is New Era people, making the ratio of New Era to Old Era on my worst case scenario cast 10-8, which was what I was expecting for the actual cast to look like. In recent news, that could be different, but for me personally, I don't actually hate the idea of having a lot less new era people on the cast than old school era. But starting with the worst case scenario cast, I will be skipping over Survivor 41 despite Xander almost making this cast, if it wasn't for a last second addition. And so moving on to Survivor 42, I got a couple people here. One of them, Drea Wheeler, who just sucks all around when it comes to her controversy with Omer in Ponderosa. And if I'm being honest, that is point blank the reason I want Drea nowhere near Survivor 50. It's really that simple. For those of you who don't know, Drea said some very awful comments to Omer at Ponderosa that he revealed in his RHAP exit interview, and that created a whole controversy where basically Ponderosa was disbanded after that. They don't allow anything more than an hour interview. Just so much was changed because of this information about Drea being so terrible got out. And if I'm being honest, this pick actually happening is a lot more unlikely as more time goes on. So I don't think I'm expecting Drea to be on 50, luckily, but the percentage is not 0. And that's kind of due to what production did in light of this incident. Obviously, pre-incident, production loved Drea at the time, probably one of, if not their favorite from 42. It's between her and somebody else I might be talking about in just a second. But also, when it comes to the Omer controversy, production basically did everything they could to protect Drea's name, where they publicly addressed this and asked RHAP to take down that Omer interview, all because they wanted to protect Drea instead of Omer. And if you're going to go to those lengths to protect somebody, there is at least a point in a time where you were determined to bring this person back on another season. And who knows where they stand today, but I think Drea at the very least has a chance to be in the running, which makes her eligible for this list and somebody I better not see on 50. Continuing with people who suck and yet production loves them, I got Jonathan Young on this cast, and I just don't particularly like Jonathan. I thought he didn't give much of anything, despite being a big-ass dude that is great in challenges. I always thought there was a bit of ickiness with him at points, and I don't think he would add anything more to Survivor 50 aside from obviously being great in challenges, which is one of the last qualities I'm personally looking for in somebody. Unfortunately, I do know Survivor Production loves Jonathan, and I think he is pretty likely to return to the show. I just really hope they come to their senses, though, and leave him at the cutting room floor. I think that's how the saying goes, maybe. And production, for 1 second, just thinks about what they're doing if they cast this man, because casting somebody who's only going to be there to bring crazy challenges is lame as hell. So, please, I beg of you, no Jonathan. We actually have a third person from Survivor 42, which is very wild, but Mike Turner is on my cast. And Mike is kind of just whatever to me. I thought in the preseason he had his fun moments, but his whole shtick and him as a character just kind of began to bother me on the season. I don't really have any interest or care to see Mike back because I don't think he's going to bring much else. I'm sure he'll do pretty well, assuming he's in decent shape and health, but do I want to see another Mike Turner run on the big Survivor 50? Definitely not. But I do think at the very least, Mike is a likely figure that production would want to at least contact and consider for the season. I thought they liked him at the time. He plays the game pretty hard, got a good edit, and would definitely be willing to come back. So it wouldn't shock me much if Mike is currently in the running to be on 50. I just hope he's not, because I don't feel any desire to see a Mike Turner 2.0, especially not on a season of this magnitude. Now moving to Survivor 44, I have two people here. And in particular, I think of any of the new era seasons of Survivor, Survivor 44 is the season I hope to see nobody from, as I'm just not clamoring for anybody here, to the point where I'm actively rooting for these people to not be cast, and that will start with somebody I think that some people see some potential in. I have no idea what they see, and that is Lauren Harp. And Lauren is somebody people have talked about as lost potential, or somebody that is really capable, and giving her a second chance would show what she's made of, and I just disagree. She made it to the final 5. You can't really make it much further than that, and yeah, I can't name a single notable thing she did aside from rigging a Journey rock draw in episode 1. That's it. I just don't think there's anything there to get from Lauren Harp. She would simply be taking up a spot that somebody else would have if Survivor 50 wants to be this big season. I know the producers like her, and I just hope they don't give in to her great story that she had and how she seems like a nice enough person to put her on the show, because if they do, it's for sure a disaster pick for me. Speaking of disasters, this person is fighting with Drea as the last person I want to see on Survivor 50, and that is Carson Garrett, who, if you have not been keeping up with all the online community stuff, really just sucks. He's gotten into many controversies online, whether that be him stealing Outplay Puzzles' business idea and trying to sell unoriginal Survivor puzzles. And then he also had the drama with Carolyn recently, where he seemed to try and make an extra profit off of her name and image, to where it just seems like Carson's a money whore, and in the worst kind of way, that he sabotages other people to get what he wants and benefits himself. Obviously, at least to those who know about this stuff, he's extremely unpopular, so no fucking way I want Carson on the season, because I think he's a gross human being. My issue is that I just don't know how production actually feels about him. Obviously, production loves Survivor 44, and in particular the Tika 3, and in a world where they don't get Carolyn on 50 and don't want winners, Carson's going to be that Survivor 44 rep. Pair that with Survivor almost positively wanting a quote-unquote nerdy rep on the season, Carson fits that as well. So as long as the relationship with production isn't completely tethered, I think Carson can definitely find his way on 50, or at the very least be in the running. And that would be a complete disaster, and I swear to God that better not happen. He's easily on this list. Moving on to Survivor 45, I do have 2 reps on this cast, despite really enjoying this season. And again, like some of my other picks, this first person is somebody I do like and did enjoy on 45 a lot, but I just don't think I need another run on Survivor 50, and that is Caleb. And Caleb is super popular with a lot of people, myself included. As an underdog, he became super rootable and obviously had one of, if not the most iconic moment of the new era with his shot in the dark play. So all of that makes production's decision pretty easy on at least considering Caleb for 50, because the resume is there. The reason I have Caleb on this list is because I don't think we're going to get much more on a return. No matter who is on this 50 cast, Caleb will be one of the biggest threats out there. And do I really want to see Caleb back out there just for him to be the first boot or one of the first boots? I just don't think what we will be getting from Caleb on a return will be worth the price of putting him back on the cast. Again, I do really like Caleb, but I just have zero faith in Caleb having a good run, and that's what's going to put him on this cast for me, because I just think it's kind of a waste. The next person I have is the very next boot from Survivor 45, and that is Kelly Nelbandian. And unlike Caleb, Kelly is here because I adamantly don't want Kelly on 50. As a person, she seems really fine, and her podcast with Michelle is, or was, fun, if they're still doing that. Regardless, I felt like Kelly has become one of the most overrated new era players and characters. People talk about her exit as super iconic and bringing back real Survivor with her what the hell guys moment, but I've always loved that tribal because of Jake and what he brought, and a lot less of what Kelly gave us. And before that moment, what was Kelly known for? Nothing. There's nothing here. She's a competent player, but we're talking Survivor 50. Like, Season 50, Kelly Nelbandian is probably not in the top half of players from Survivor 45 I would want back on 50, let alone somebody from every season of Survivor to be back on 50. Unfortunately, though, I do feel like Kelly will at least be in the running because of her exit and how much that is praised by the online audience and by production and Jeff himself. That one moment could possibly get Kelly on 50 when everything else we've been shown has told us she would instantly become one of the least interesting people on the cast. Even on this shitty cast, she's one of the least interesting people here, and that's saying a lot, so just don't do it. Now we move to Survivor 46, and this is obviously a very stacked cast when it comes to returning player potential, but out of everybody on this cast, I got 2 people from the season that I don't want to see out there in Fiji again. One of them is due to just me not being interested, while the other is due to their dynamics with somebody else, or lack thereof on this cast in particular. But I'll talk through the person I'm not interested to see, and that's Banu. Banu is obviously an extremely divisive figure in recent Survivor history. He was the entire pre-merge of Survivor 46 if you ignored Jelinski and the premiere. But outside of the premiere, the pre-merge was just the Banu show. And the Banu show was some of the worst Survivor I've ever seen. Genuinely, I hated watching that stretch of episodes, and Banu is obviously a massive factor in that. Pairing that with me having no faith Banu would change his game or give me any reason why he could potentially win, I just feel like there's no reason Banu should be out there, aside from being a character. My fear is that Banu obviously got such a massive edit despite being out there for only 4 episodes, and if Survivor is still infatuated with Banu and what he could bring from a character perspective, they could easily bring him out here. But I just don't see the need, and I only think that would dampen the show if Banu is on Survivor 50, because, come on, what is he bringing? Now, for the next person from Survivor 46, this is somebody I would be interested in seeing, but not just on their own accord, and that is Maria. Maria is obviously a pretty controversial figure due to everything in the finale of 46 with her not voting for Charlie and essentially being the reason for Charlie not winning, despite them being the duo of the season. And if I'm being honest, I would love to see Maria and Charlie on Survivor 50 together because I think that rivalry would be fascinating television to see unfold. That is the dynamic and the situation that I would love to see Maria in. The only issue is that, spoiler alert, Charlie is not a name on this cast, and if we are living in a world where only Maria is on this cast without Charlie, that is where Maria becomes a doomsday pick, because I don't care to see that. Now, I do think she's a pretty decent character and a fun modern day Survivor villain, but that dynamic with Charlie is the moneymaker. That is what I am here to see. Now, I'm sure some of you guys will say, well, why pick Maria instead of Charlie if you want them together? The reason for that is because I think Charlie has more going for him on his own than Maria does. Just from the fact that he dominated pretty much every single round of that season, including unraveling Maria's entire game, and yet just fell short. I would be fascinated to see how he plays out in a hypothetical Survivor 50 season, trying to get that redemption, and seeing if he can become one of the best modern players ever. So I have intrigue and investment with Charlie by himself, where I don't have that with Maria, which is what gets her on this list because there's no Charlie here. And now, the final person on this cast, I have my lone representation from Survivor 47, easily the person I would least want on Survivor 50 of the people that are realistic options from 47, and that is Kyle. And Kyle is somebody production really wanted everybody to love. He had his random little quips he'd say every episode, and obviously being the country boy who was good at challenges, Kyle isn't offending me or offending anybody for existing. But out of everybody on 47, Kyle is at the bottom of the totem pole of who I want back. I just don't really click with Kyle as a character. He felt really boring to me, and yes, had a sweet story, but still not somebody I root for because he's automatically going to be one of the last people I care about or want to see succeed on any given episode or any given season in the future. Also, I need to say this, he's kind of overrated as a quote-unquote challenge beast in my mind, because I don't even think he's that good in challenges. So if Kyle's pretty boring, not strategic, and not even that great in challenges, what does he have going for him? It's pretty much nothing. That's not somebody I want on 50. We have a cast. This is my version of the worst possible cast I could realistically see out there on the islands of Fiji for Survivor 50. That cast consists of Jervis Peterson, Alicia Calloway, Candace Woodcock, Sierra Easton, Tasha Fox, Julia Sokolowski, Tai Trang, Rick Devens, Drea Wheeler, Jonathan Young, Mike Turner, Lauren Harp, Carson Garrett, Caleb Jeberold, Kelly Nalbandian, Banu Gopal, Maria Shaim Gonzalez, and Kyle Oswald. And that's about it. Nothing too serious, this is just a fun activity that got my brain in the Survivor 50 mood, and I wanted to show you guys my perspective on what I'm looking forward to and not looking forward to when it comes to this cast and this season. Aside from that, of course, look forward to seeing the same video, but my best possible cast coming next week where I'll talk through a realistic dream cast for me. Also, look forward to my eventual Survivor 48 review, and then I will do a cast reaction when we do inevitably get the Survivor 50 cast, which is going to be an event. Let me tell you, I probably have a lot of videos that I will talk about after that cast comes out. But that'll do it for me. If you made it to the end of this video, I love you. Platonically, of course. And I will undoubtedly See ya when I see ya. Bye-bye.